This is day 1766 days, and lots being sent, lots to go through, and we're just growing and growing, because people are starting to get it. They're starting to understand that what we're saying is true, and it just takes a time, because it just takes time, because you know um, if you would have told me in our family 1,600 and 1,766 days ago that something like this could happen, that this would be bigger than the Iran-Contra scandal, that this would be one of the biggest cases, including the Walmart mass shooting intertwined in this case, right? Also, the Julio Cordero intertwined in this case. His recent death and his Operation Poison Ponds intertwined in this case, and being so international and involving so many agencies, I would have said no way, because we have checks and balances, right? We have checks and balances. Um, but this infiltration, this treason, this mutiny has been going on for a long time. The infiltration into our government system to abuse their powers, and people get it now. They see our military leadership. They see our congressional leadership. They see our Senate leadership. They see our judicial judges. And, they all, they don't have much good to say about it. They really don't. And it's not the system that they don't have much good to say about. The system, they want to preserve it, right? They want to preserve it. They try to do the get rid of the police or whatever. And, that's not what they want. And they would be rioting, the Americans would be rioting if they wanted to get rid of the system. They don't want to get rid of the system. They want to preserve the system. I've talked to so many. The Constitution is so wonderful. The Texas Constitution is so wonderful. The problem is you have bad actors in very important positions that are not defending the Constitution, that are not doing the hard work of holding those accountable for the violations of the Constitution, right? There is an unequal justice system. There is an unequal justice system. You have a lot, you have the use of the system that gets exploited for, like whistleblowers like Richard, what they did with the UCMJ. It's, they'll abuse it, they'll misuse it. You have the whole thing with Melendez where he abused his position. He absolutely needs to be held accountable for what he did. You have even bigger fish, right? The big contractors that fund a lot of our politicians, right? And so that compromises our politicians, and our politicians become criminals, absolutely criminals. Look at so many. I wanted to go look at Lindsey Graham. I wanted to say that, but I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say, go look at Lindsey Graham. I'm not going to say that because, I really want to focus on Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe because he does so much damage. I mean, he does so much damage. Really, I probably should talk about Lindsey Graham doing his damage in this case. Um, but Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe is still active duty. Not that, not that they should not be held accountable just because they retire, like General Michael Garrett, like Lieutenant General Donna Martin, who just got called out on our site for stolen valor, right? For stolen valor. It just gets worse and worse with her, right? It just gets so bad. Well, that's what traitors do. They become imposters. They are absolutely imposters, and they're wearing our uniforms, and they're wearing our badges, and they're wearing our stars, and it's really stolen valor, stolen authority, or you know, well, it's mutiny, it's treason, it's being a traitor. And, that's becoming more and more clear every day and hard evident to the people. For us, we know it's clear because we have the hard evidence, right? For the Halliday family and all of our friends, we understand. We absolutely understand now. But we are people, are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So we have to be patient and make our case to the people. And that's why I come on every day to make our case, showing the evidence to the people. And that's uh, and that's what's been happening. So in El Paso, I can't express thank yous enough for El Pasoans reaching out to us, sharing information, sharing our posts, but also becoming whistleblowers, and um, and really helping us move our case forward, and being so kind, being absolutely getting it. They absolutely get it, and I don't think a lot of people understand what El Paso has been through, what they've been through, and just highway robbery, right? Grand theft, larceny, with all of these contracts, and that's why I say that Fort Bliss needs to be shut down, because it is just such a stumbling block. It is too big of a temptation, because our military has so much support. It's a $1 trillion military. It has so much support that you know, it's a temptation for people to take advantage of it, and it's really a temptation there in El Paso because it's right there on the border, and so they can manipulate the border, the uh, the two countries, and the citizens, the two citizens and dual citizens, and all the visas and everything like that, to hide and money launder, and traffic and everything. And so it just really is too big of a temptation there, and they really need to shut it down. They need to shut it down. Um, and I know there's all these mixed feelings because it provides jobs, but El Paso is an ancient city. It is, it has potential that I don't think people can even understand. And so if Fort Bliss was shut down, El Paso would um, absolutely uh, focus on other means, and I think it would make the city better because there's so much there. It's the miners, right? They're the miners. There's so much there. It's not just sand, y'all. It's not just sand. There's so much there, and we got to get the water mafia out of there too. The water mafia needs to stop manipulating the water there. But it's just a beautiful ancient city, right there with an amazing culture. And I know it because that's I was born at White Sands and I went to school in El Paso. It's just amazing, amazing place. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's start from the beginning of 1,766 days since Richard, our son, Richard, the Distinguished Honor Graduate for Basic Training in AIT, who, was raised in Europe. He was raised in Europe by a military family. He was homeschooled. He traveled the world. He did all kinds of neat things. Played the piano and was a black belt in karate, and loved jokes, loved astronomy, or loved stones. He loved to, what do you call that when you break stones open and you find the gems and everything? He loved that, and he would buy me those for presents. He bought me a beautiful necklace, and I wear it. Um, he bought me this beautiful duck made out of gems, that I put out every year. He bought me a stone that has the most beautiful, like sapphire blue color, crystals inside of it. He loved it as a kid. He bought it in one of those shops. He loved it. And he bought it in Heidelberg, Germany, on the Fußgänger, the walking zone. They had a gem shop, and he loved that. And we lived in this apartment. It's a really long story, but we had 4 children. We lived in this one-bedroom apartment for 5 years. But it was just the best of times. It was just amazing because we were in walking distance from downtown Heidelberg, Germany. And we got out. We got out and did so many things because we homeschooled. Um, and of course, he spent half the year in Ireland because in Germany you can't homeschool as civilians; it's illegal. And so we spent half the year in Ireland, and we turned this beautiful, very old, like, I don't know how old that house is, a very, very old cottage, into this beautiful home, and did a lot of work with that, and were able to get to know Ireland, go up to Giant's Causeway, go to Sligo, go up to um, go down to Mayo and to Cork, right, the Star Fort down there, um, and go up to Donegal. I have wonderful memories of Donegal. It's so breathtaking, beautiful. Um, and we got to travel all around Europe and into Asia. That's what he did. And he joined the army from South Korea. And I heard that South Korea has a big election tomorrow. So we were really praying for them. Because it's they're on the verge of the CCP taking over. So we love South Korea, and been there very many, many times. ADA is there. ADA, Air Defense Artillery, is there. We have a lot of troops there. And we were there visiting, and Richard came and he joined the army from there. He joined the army from South Korea, and he went to basic training. He got the Distinguished Honor Graduate, number one. They gave him $500, and we called him and we said, "Oh my gosh, that's so awesome, Richard. We're going to meet that." And we sent him $500 too. So that put a little chunk of money in his bank account, and it was well deserved, very well deserved. And then, of course, he was number one for AIT also. And he went to El Paso, and I was like, "Oh, I love El Paso." But I didn't realize that it had been overran by criminals, by organized criminals, and organized criminals that were in the military, and to such high levels like Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe, who had invested interest that was for his own personal gain in El Paso. Um, and, that's all documented. And so he did not go there to command Fort Bliss, to defend the Constitution. All the evidence shows that he absolutely breached. Had the El Paso was the security was totally breached. A 14-year-old girl was living in the barracks, being misused for money for 4 months. 11 soldiers almost died because of the drinking grog in the field. Grog is like, you name it, every kind of hard alcohol mixed together, and then they drink it. But this was poured into a sea-lit, and the sea-lit had antifreeze in it, and almost 11 soldiers died. And this was during a field problem, okay? This was in the field during, it's just such a breach of anything, any kind of leadership. And of course, Asia Graham, who was a whistleblower, who had been abused in the worst kind of way that a woman can be abused. And she was so young, and she was found unalive in December of 2020. And, and that's under his watch, and I can go on and on and on. And then with Richard's case, the Nidal Baem lie, not telling us, not keeping information from us, keeping information about Judge Roger Rodriguez's whistleblower complaint, who identified the prime suspects in the murder of Richard. He kept that from us. The 15-6 was such a joke. It was about extortion, and he didn't even look at one bank account, didn't even check one bank account. And that was the whole cause for the 15-6. The allowing us to our home to be searched without a warrant, the retaliation, the ongoing retaliation by the unit, the dissemination of the unit, right? The deployment of them. They should have all been flagged. And of course, Leilani Hart's confession of the worst type of crimes against children, and then also owning Hart's childcare and the worst type of crimes against children, her own. And she's a mother of, and she implicated her own son, who was Richard's platoon leader, Dallas Hart. She implicated him in the worst type of crimes against children and the worst type of crimes against male family members that, you can't even express. It's so disgusting, and it's so vile that you can't even say it on a live stream, and many, many other violations. And, Lieutenant General Bernabe lied in the official records, which is so bad. Oh my gosh, it's so bad. So, he is, he absolutely has to be court-martialed, right? And he has to pay the highest price for what he did, right? The highest price. Of course, he's being protected because of Lieutenant General Donna Martin, of course, General Garrett, who they're both dirty. They both have invested interests outside of what their duties were. And of course, McConville, and of course, Mealy, who was absolutely treasonous, calling China. He was mutinous. These are all mutineers They all had their own little um, personal gain, uh, organized crimes established, and they hated President Trump because President Trump wanted a defense of the Constitution, a fighting force, a disciplined force, a force with esprit de corps, a force with, uh, where they don't target our soldiers and compromise them so that they can't be whistleblowers. He didn't want that. He wanted strong soldiers. He wanted, and still does. You see that with what's going on. But I'm talking about 2017, 18, 19, and 20. And when you look at his EOs, his executive orders, when you look at what he was investigating at the time, what he was auditing, we know he was auditing Fort Bliss. We know that he was investigating the border. We know that there were investigations going on with Walmart, which is very important when you know that Walmart, the mass shooting that happened on August 3rd, 2019, was so manipulated into a narrative that targeted President Trump with a false narrative, And that false narrative continues because these leaders, part of their criminal network includes the media. And they absolutely grand theft larceny of, $1 trillion military budget. And then, of course, you have all the new information. We have all the new information about the U.S. aid, about how all of the funding was, targeted, right? Everything was being targeted for years to, get a piece of that pie, and in a criminal way, And that's why you have so many Americans now, so many that understand, because we don't have anything to show for. We don't have much to show for $37 trillion in debt. If you go to Dubai, if you go to South Korea, at least they have some nice airports. At least they have some functioning air controllers. And I don't want to say something bad about that, but they were being targeted, right? They were absolutely being targeted, especially during 2020, 2021. They were being targeted. And we've had enough of being targeted. There's too many victims in all of this. You name it: doctors, nurses, air traffic controllers, pilots, steel workers, coal miners, any small business, whistleblowers, the military, our military, and on, our university students. There's so many victims in all of this, that they are getting it. They understand that this was to preserve a criminal network that had infiltrated our country's system, government system. And so we're a very giving people. We want a really well-run government. We have not. We're about the oldest government in the world. I think we are about the oldest government in the world because we don't riot. We really don't. I was there at January 6th, and I can tell you right now, that was instigated, what did happen, and 1 million people there. It was, let me tell you, they wouldn't have had a chance if the people really wanted to riot. They wouldn't have even had a chance with 1 million people. But they didn't. They were singing songs, patriotic songs. They were standing out in the cold. I was one of them standing out in the cold. And when we were praying the Lord's Prayer, we were there with family members and a lot of Chinese people, a lot of Chinese that don't want the CCP to come into this country and take away the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. A lot of them. So there were a lot of patriots there, um, and it the false narrative was as plain as can be to me because I was there, um, and it's just we don't really riot. We are very, very patient, and they have the enemy, the organized criminals. They have taken advantage of that, right? And so we're law abiding. We're doing this by the book, by the word that is our law, and we want accountability now. We want those that infiltrated, that abused their power, uh, that committed treason, that committed mutiny, that violated the UCMJ over and over and over again, their duty in the military. We want them to be held accountable for the murder of our son, the retaliation against him for being a whistleblower that led to his murder, and then the abuse of his remains and um, and the cover up. And rightfully so. Rightfully, we want accountability. We would be bad parents if we didn't demand accountability for what they did to our son. We would be very bad parents if we didn't follow through with this. And we would be even worse patriots, worse countrymen if we didn't follow through and demand accountability for what they did at Fort Bliss in El Paso. Hundreds of thousands of children being trafficked, and now where are they? They're missing. Most of them are dead. Most of them are dead. I hear that they've, found some. They found some. But you're talking about hundreds of thousands, 10,000 at a time. That emergency intake center that they call the death camp, that can sleep 10,000 at a time. It's so big. People don't understand how big the emergency intake center is, except for General Kelly. He understands how big it is because he likes to profit off of it. He likes to profit off of, quote, unaccompanied minors coming into the country. He likes to profit off of that. And he is an absolute criminal targeting the, those that need help. Yeah, he is really, he gives all this pretense that he is honorable, and he's not. He's not. He's quite the opposite. He is absolutely a traitor in this country because he went over to, because he was Southcom, so he had years and years and years of connections that he made, and he went over to Chihuahua to the governor of Chihuahua and advised and worked for them, which is so. What a traitor! What a scumbag traitor! So that's General John Kelly, a Marine at that. And there's several Marines that went over to the dark side in our son's case. Several Marines that went over to the dark side, and several Mormons. A lot of Mormons. There's a very a common denominator of Mormons that went over to the dark side. They really did. Um, and and then of course we have the law enforcement that went over to the dark side, like Gustavo Chavez and Manuel Chavira, Gustavo Sanchez. Did I say Gustavo Sanchez and Manuel Chavira with Nidal Baem? They're all family. They're all in-laws. Nidal Baem, and wouldn't it be something if there was like in-laws in this whole thing to Bernabe? Wouldn't that be something? If he had some in-laws in there too, that would be something, right? Um, so this is, it just shows you that Gustavo Sanchez, who was the Texas Ranger assigned to our case, um, is up to no good when he's related to Nidal Baem, who we have on CCTV footage being an FBI imposter, a fraudster, and taking that authority, that title, and telling the people in the store that they could take down the flyers, that Richard had been found, that the search was over, and that they had found that he was dead, and they had found his remains in Juarez, Mexico, and that they need to be very quiet about it. Very quiet. They need to be silent. Shh. He put up his finger to his mouth and he said, they need to be silent. They need to be silent. This is a secret. Why is that a secret? What happens to a Fort Bliss whistleblower soldier? I don't think that's something to be silent about. And they weren't. They weren't. They were amazing, amazing. And here he is, the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado of the G3 of the 32nd AgCom, with major connections, to contractors. Okay, to contractors. This is about uh, you know these generals and other contractors working together. Because if you have a general inside and you're a contractor, and you can get a no bid approval on your contract, or you can get I don't know, manipulated. Okay, so and so, and it would be interesting to check the bank accounts, right? To check the bank accounts who got a little bit of favor for putting forth one of these contracts. Um, so it is really, and they're very lucrative. They're millions and billions of dollars. Because we have a $1 trillion military, right? And so and they all have their own little LLC, right? And then they do uh, their terrible crime um, with the criminal trafficking. That's why there's so much drugs on base. That's why a 14-year-old girl is allowed to live in the barracks um, for money for 4 months. For 4 months, that's why there's so much compromising of our soldiers, because they videotape it. They do like an Epstein thing, right? They do an Epstein thing. They videotape everything and keep it, and then they use it for blackmail and all of that. Epstein did it. He's not the only one that did it. They did it on Fort Bliss. They did it on Fort Bliss, and if you're making loads of money with your contracts, and something is fishy, and you're doing some criminal trafficking on top of that, you don't want whistleblowers. You don't want whistleblowers. So you have to compromise your soldiers, and make them weak, and make them turn them into um, the opposite of what they need to be. The opposite of what they need to be. And we have so many soldiers talking about how they were targeted with booze and drugs and sexual stuff. And you remember the doggy face colonel, that he even admitted in his text messages that he was targeting young doggies, right? Young puppies. I think he called them puppies, young puppies, for his sexual pleasures. Um, Yeah, it's pretty, and I have pictures of that too. And there was a big cult group of these doggy military people that are targeting our young sons and daughters. Um, there was a cult of them. They have a series of pictures and everything. So this is all an Epstein thing or a P. Diddy. P. Diddy did the same thing. For Hollywood, let's just film it all. Let's just compromise them all. Um, let's compromise, and then we can run these organized criminal enterprises, and not worry about anyone saying anything. I mean, there's one singer. He was a little young boy, and he still can't admit to what has happened to him. And clearly, there's no doubt in my mind that most likely, I better put that in front of it, that he was absolutely targeted all these years and very abused, psychologically abused, physically abused. It's very clear. It's very clear because you can just see it, right? You just have to open up your eyes and you can see it. And it's really heartbreaking. And so that's what Lieutenant General Sean Bernabe was doing. He was allowing all of that. He was allowing all of that to go on, the targeting of our young sons and daughters, hundreds of thousands of children that just, went missing and are mostly dead now, and all of the weapons trafficking, the arms trafficking, the lying to a whistleblowing um, murdered soldier's family, absolutely lying to our face about Nidal Baem, keeping Roger Rodriguez's um, report from us, keeping Leilani Hart's confession from us, and there's keeping the fact that Danae Katzen's husband was 14380A, was 14380A, and she had targeted us, and she was in possession of Richard's credit cards and financial information after he had been murdered, after his death. And so, and her husband has this total connection into Richard's, uh, 14380A, you know. Um, it's just stunning. Um, the violations, the violations that they are willing to do in order to protect their personal gain. Okay? In order to protect their personal gain, they are absolutely selling out their soul, selling out their country. It is absolute treason. It's absolute being a and you know why it's treason? Because these criminal trafficking is with the Mexican cartel groups that are absolutely in the web of the CCP. So you are aiding and abetting the CCP. You're aiding and abetting these Mexican cartels that are caught in the web of the CCP. And now you have, years later, in the month of May, 80 executions in Chihuahua alone. 80 executions in Chihuahua alone. And some of them are generals, y'all. So some of these are government officials. And, that's because no accountability. And we have a bunch of traitors that are in high places, right? In high wearing uniforms with stars, and they're traitors. And so we need to hold these individuals accountable. And that includes um, James Montoya. James Montoya has no authority at all for his position. He is an imposter. Why do I say that? Because the evidence confirms that he is an imposter with the 2028 stamp. 2028 hasn't even happened yet, and he has a 2028 stamp trying to prove that he submitted his statement of officer uh, in a lawful manner to be installed as the prosecutor for the 34th Judicial District Attorney's Office. And he's not. He's not, because he tampered with the documents. He did not submit it um, and it was so easy to do, and he didn't do it. And now he's not legal. He's absolutely an imposter. And so before him, we had another usurper. I think they're doing it on purpose so that nothing gets prosecuted, right? They don't want anything prosecuted with a legitimate prosecutor. And so I think they're doing it on purpose. And so we have two illegitimate prosecutors in the 34th Judicial District Attorney's Office that are supposed to be the district attorney, and they're not. They're not. They're just total imposters, and they are just holding up all the accountability. Um, that is, very, very personal to us because we need a legitimate prosecutor, right, to prosecute our son's case. And we're very, very ready, and we have a mountain of evidence for our case. So we want a legitimate prosecutor. And then, you have judges that are just have that are also imposters. I don't even want to call them judges. I don't know how to explain it to people. But since 2015, the El Paso Criminal Law Magistrate Court is supposed to have elected judges. Anybody on that court that's not an elected judges is not legitimate, has no authority. Guess what? They're all appointed. And so they all have no authority. They're not judges. And these cases are botched. They handle like over 90% of all the cases in El Paso County. And it's just all botched. It's just botched. So, these are the things that we have found out through our investigation. And that is hard evidence that no one can dispute, just like the Mayela Crucius wedding. That's hard evidence that the media has kept. The media, like if you're Angela Kacherga, you have a lot of material here that you can report on, and they reported early on to get a false narrative. But now that the truth has come out, they have a hard time saying the truth because they're dirty. They're involved in this also. They're involved in this also. Otherwise, because a lot of people go, why hasn't Angela Kacherga covered this? Right? Why haven't they covered the in the line of duty? Why haven't they covered the Mayela Crucius marriage? Right? Why haven't they covered the the illegitimate judges sitting on the magistrate court? Why haven't they covered the 2028 stamp of James Montoya? Because they protect. This is a dual system right now. They're protecting their criminal um, uh, organized crime members, right? They're criminal organized crime members. And so that's why they're not mentioning Dallas Hart or Tavita Nusa or Leilani Hart or James Montoya or Bill Hicks or even Mario Raskin Ortiz, the chief medical examiner, who's not legitimate, not qualified for the position. He's illegally in this country. And, they're not reporting on it. And so clearly, Angela Kacherga doesn't care one lickety split about Hispanic women or Hispanic children. She allowed hundreds of thousands of children to be trafficked. She didn't talk about all of these connections that would have really helped stop all of that much, much quicker. Um, she didn't talk about the Walmart mass shooting. Patrick Crucius surrendering himself two times and being, severely autistic. And, of course, his brother marrying the Mayella, and the Mayella's being in the DA's office. She absolutely knew that Michael G. Mayella was in the DA's office and in the FBI office and working for Walmart cybersecurity. Well, maybe she didn't know that, but one little bit of search and she could have found it. It took us just a little search. Once you find out that Crucius and Mayella are married, and then you do a little search on the family, you absolutely find all kinds of things. So, they're trying to wipe it. They're trying to wipe it because they're trying to cover up for their criminal network, their criminal enterprise. They're organized crime group, and that's why they were really, really angry with us for being parents, for being parents. She was very angry with us for being parents, um, being on TikTok, right? Um, yeah, so now it's, she should be reporting on all of this if she really cared about the El Paso community, but she doesn't. She doesn't care about UTIP. She just cares about her personal gain. I mean, that's why, just, her personal relationship with Nieto, and the purchase of her house, right? It's very, very clear that, this is all for personal gain for her. And then her husband of Dallas Morning News, wanting to interview someone about the Walmart mass shooting. And who did he interview? Texas Heart. Can you believe it? Texas Heart. I mean, this is protecting and promoting their criminal um, their criminal network of people. That's what this is. So, yeah, thank you so much, Anicia, for coming on. Michael Mudd, any news or updates from current administration? Talk is a lot of things, different topics coming out in the open. This year, some will get treason. Yeah, we're absolutely um, we got some really great news today from several agencies. So, and that's why, I've been meaning to get back on TikTok, but there's only so much time in the day. Um, and so many things because we're filing our claims, y'all. We're filing our claims. And it's just uh, getting everything just right because and then more and more comes out, just this whole Ruggiero thing with him, with his wife and being connected to Clem Coward and all of that. That's, in the works, all of those connections, that absolutely establishes this, this conspiracy, right? This colluding of these highest individuals. When you have the Texas Ranger that's been appointed to your case, when you have Nieto leaking your whistleblower report and name, putting Judge Rodriguez at risk to Leilani Hart, to Tavita Nusa. I think more to Tavita Nusa, and then of course it got disseminated. You know, when you do something like that out of the FBI, and then we have the other FBI, going back through our notes and just connecting the dots with the other FBIs that were involved, that were at the Task Force Find Richard Halliday meeting. Um, and their connections with each other, um, with Gustavo Sanchez, with Manuel Chavira of the El Paso ISD, and then you have connections with Amber Chase with that. Uh, it's you're just like, wow. And then of course the big players, the PAO, Allie Payne, and all of her violations from the beginning, and they're protecting her. They're protecting her. You know, so to put together this, and it's so unbelievable it sounds so crazy, but it's true. And we're putting out the evidence for everyone. And we even have to word the documents carefully and concisely to make sure that those that are reading the documents understand the level of collusion here. To understand the level of collusion between these individuals and their motives and their motives. And I can tell you They had their organized criminal enterprise going for a long time. Grand theft larceny for a long time. And Richard went there. He was not compromised. Um, he wanted to be CID. President Trump, you see what happened is President Trump he took the oath of office in 2017, and Richard got there in 2018. And President Trump wanted to secure that border. And Richard was there that had a good character. And there were investigations going on. And there were things that were very wrong going on. And Richard was a witness to the things that were very wrong going on. And he was a witness in those investigations. That's why there were IG all over the barracks because of Halliday. That's why there were audits. That's why the barracks were found to be flush with weapons, meaning unauthorized weapons. And Richard was a witness to that. And he was a whistleblower to that. Because you can be a witness, but then if you're not willing to report it, and he was willing to report it in his official soldier capacity on Fort Bliss, and he did it. And his unit, his platoon leader was Dallas Hart. And why was Delta Battery so important? Because that's the battery that gets the fuel. So with any trafficking, you need fuel. And, he was right in the middle. He was right there at the time when President Trump was a willing investigator, right? They did not have control over President Trump. See, with President Biden, they had control. That's why they went turbo force with the emergency intake center starting in March of 2021. But with President Trump, they didn't have control. They couldn't just act with impunity. And that's why they had to retaliate. That's why they ended up murdering Richard and treating his remains so badly to cover it up. And then tampering with files and ordering obstruction and interfering in the investigation and leaking the whistleblower complaint and retaliating against that and all of the false narratives in the media. That's why they even did the Walmart mass shooting. It's the same people. They had to redirect attention from the investigations that were being brought on El Paso to secure the border. And everyone knows that that President Trump's platform was to secure the border. That was his platform. And Richard was MAGA. Just to let you know. He was a President Trump supporter. And that made him more of a target. And you know that because in 2017, 2018, 2016 too, but 2017, 18, 19, 20, and throughout until now, if you were a MAGA supporter, you were silenced. You were targeted. And our family was a MAGA supporter, and Richard was right there with us. And so he was a willing whistleblower. And they had to silence him. And it's the evidence is not just me saying so. The Department of Defense, 4 days after President Trump took the oath of office on January 24th, 2025, declared his death in the line of duty. What does that mean? Well, if you take it with all the other paperwork and all the other declarations, it means he was murdered in the line of duty on Fort Bliss. And that's why I can say it, because it is official. And it was absolutely for the retaliation. And you see that with Captain Park and how he responded, what Ruggiero and his family, how they responded, the PAO, the CAO were on like the 6th casualty affairs office. How many people have had like 6 casualty affairs officers, right? So and so many CID and OIG, CID, or whatever all that is. My husband knows all that. He's in communication, and you have to really file, especially because we had the 4 years of Biden, and that was a lot of obstruction, a lot of intentional. Remember, we even asked the government, Rob petitioned the government while we were in El Paso in 2020 to make sure that the CID was doing their job, because we didn't feel like they were doing their job. So, it's when you realize how big the whole situation is, we have done this in speedy time. Speedy time. And you can say, oh my gosh, but it's been almost 5 years. Yeah, but most people don't get any kind of accountability. They don't get any kind of truth. And even worse things happen to them. So we've done, it's been a miracle what God has done, really. It's been a miracle. And we are really at the accountability. I know people want accountability. But we have to make sure that our claims absolutely, that they're well thought out, and that, we pick, we pick what we need. You can't do it all. You have to, first, you have to pick where you want to start, So, it is really a miracle, and we are very, very grateful for everyone's patience, and we are absolutely moving forward for the sake of our son, for our family, for our grandchildren, because they know that we fought for Richard, and that will go down in history. And but we're also fighting for El Paso, and even Juarez, which is heartbreaking. 80 executions in 1 month, but we're fighting for our Constitution, and it sounds, like, oh, a little lame or whatever, but that's who we are. We're patriots. We love our Constitution. We love our Bill of Rights. We love our country, and that's just who we are. And everyone that knows us knows that is true. We serve God and country. And so that's why we're trying to do this the right way, because we have faith in the system. We have faith in the system way more than in the humans, right? But faith in the system. And so, it's just that you have to participate in the system. And that's what's difficult. You have to absolutely, we the people, for the people, by the people, have to hold our system to what they need to do. And that's the hard part, because that takes so much work. And, and I'm like, well, our taxes need to be a lot. I think we need to get rid of our taxes. And then people wouldn't mind so much. But it's grand theft larceny. Um, and these Congress people, they get in there and they just do the worst type of things up there in our beautiful building, in our beautiful Capitol building. They do the worst type of things. Um, so, yeah, we need to uh, be the people of this country together and under God, and the system will work. So, thank you so much. God bless you, and I will be back tomorrow.